Let's follow up on the in-and-out allegations, and there are new allegations this evening involving the use of parliamentary stationery and resources by the House of Commons office of MP Jason Kenney, who, as you know, is also the Minister of Immigration. I spoke with our panel of party strategists. All right, time now for our party strategist. Bill Pristanski is here for the Conservative Party. Greg MacEachern is here for the Liberal Party, and Kathleen Monk is here for the NDP. Good to see you all again.
Good to see you.
Lots to talk about today. Let's start with the in-and-out controversy. And we have now one of the men at the center of the controversy, Senator Doug Findlay. He's one of the Conservatives charged in the in-and-out case under the Elections Act. He's finally broken his silence about the story, and he broke it on Twitter. He's tweeting last night about this case, and here's what Senator Doug Findlay had to say. Anyone who thinks Prime Minister Stephen Harper was that deeply involved in campaign is an idiot. Campaign makes millions of decisions in 35 days. Think. And then he went on to write, intrigued by Leighton Iggy on election spending, would win aught in any forum, and aught means over the top, so would win over the top in any forum. So that's the extent of Senator Doug Findlay's comments and all of this. Bill, where is this story going, and how much of a problem do you think it presents for the Conservatives?
Well, this is a long-going 5-year dispute now that the Conservative Party has been having with Elections Canada, and it's a dispute over whether expenses were national or were at the riding level. And in one court, the court ruled with the Conservatives. Now another court has ruled with Elections Canada, and this is being appealed. So we'll find out sooner or later where this all ends. But it's an administrative, national versus local spending. The spending limits were not exceeded by this. Everything was done within the spending limits as they were prescribed by Elections Canada. Right. So I don't think it's a problem.
Greg, I know you don't see it the same way at all.
So many talking points, so little time. This thing that they say, the Conservatives are saying that it's administrative. Jail time could result in this. So you can call it administrative, but the threat of jail is there. So you can call it anything you want.
It's not a criminal.
But that's no. I let you do your talking points, Bill. Let me address.
But you're saying it's a criminal proceeding. It's not.
It is not. It can result. It can result in fines and jail time. It's not a criminal code offense.
But no one has been sent to jail.
What did I say? Jail time could result.
That is true.
Basically what I see this.
Summer could come.
Hang on, Bill. Okay, go ahead.
If you want to win by cheating, and this is what it appears to be. I'll ratchet this up then as much as you want, Bill. You took money. The Conservatives took money, gave them to ridings that weren't going to spend their limit, and then overnight took it back so that they could do a huge amount of ads. If I gave you money and asked for it again the next day back, wouldn't you smell something funny there? You don't get to keep it, and that's exactly what they did here. There's another issue, too, to clarify for people.
Can you do it if you don't exceed the limits?
Absolutely not.
Because the Conservative claim, as you know, is that other parties did it. Other parties have done this. But the opposition say, yeah, but if it was done, it was never.
If you were spending it on a regional ad buy, if I was giving you this money as a candidate to buy ads in your riding, in your area, sure. But that's not what they were doing. They were doing it for national ads.
Well, regional ads.
And there's one other point that's really important here. One other point that I want to make, Bill, is that receipts seem to have been doctored, and that's going to be really key when this goes on. The company that was hired to do the media ads for the Conservatives looked at the receipts and said, those don't look like ours, yet they had their name on it. And I think you can call it administrative, you can call it anything you want, but there's something wrong when you're doctoring receipts.
All right, Kathleen?
I think the point is, and the Conservatives have been very clever on this point, is that it's a difficult story to tell. In and out, we're not really sure, election laws. Canadians as a whole aren't really that familiar with this kind of stuff. But what it boils down to is the point that Greg was just trying to make, which is that they doctored documents. They cheated and they broke the rules. And why that is so crystal clear to many of us who have been following the story is the very fact that some of the candidates on the ground in the 2006 election said, no, I'm not touching this.
This is some of the Conservative candidates.
Some of the Conservative candidates who were offered to partake in this in-and-out scheme said, no, I'm not touching this.
Kathleen,
this is illegal.
Actually, and one member of Parliament.
And one member of Parliament, exactly.
Dave McKenzie said no.
And those people spoke out at the time, and they were told by Conservative Party officials to lay quiet, don't breathe a word, move on, nothing's happening here. I mean, this is significant of the fact that they were scheming and cheating in 2006, right? They were successful in their little eggshell kind of game of moving around money. Then they took the same people who developed this scheme, put them in the Senate, and put them on full-time fundraising, jobs paid for by the taxpayer, to continue to think of ideas of how to scheme and raise money. And now, the astonishing thing is that this many years later, 5 years later, we still see this kind of stuff happening.
You've got a letter from Jason Kenney's office. I want to get to that.
Yeah.
Bill, I want to let Bill respond to what you've heard from your colleagues here, that you cooked the books, you thought you'd get away with it, and they say you're not getting away with it.
Well, it was a standard practice done by all parties. The Elections Canada people, it's not a law. What it is it's an interpretation of the Act. They changed the interpretation, and quite frankly, in 2008, the party went along with the new interpretation. But all this is a discussion on whether monies were spent at the riding level or the national level, and no limits were exceeded by the party. So in the end, one court said there was a problem, another court said there wasn't a problem, and now it's all being appealed, and it's all before the courts, and the courts will.
No, you don't have the right to hold back the rebates, but that was overturned on appeal. So that's not; those aren't two equal courts.
Now is being appealed.
Another thing, he just said that this was all the same for all the parties. Well, if that's true, why is the Director of Public Prosecutions not charging the Liberals and the NDP? Here's why: because no parties may move funds around, and they may do a regional buy. They don't tie them together. And one other thing, look, tough on crime didn't mean, as I understood it, sentencing someone to 35 years in the Senate, like the two Conservatives senators are doing. They sat in caucus yesterday.
On my point, though, there's a simple action that can be taken, right? They could face jail time, but for far lesser crimes, and I'll point to Senator Raymond Levine, he was suspended from the Liberal caucus for the very fact that he asked staffers to cut down trees at his cottage property in Quebec. The Conservative government...
Not only were they cutting down the trees, and the neighbors weren't happy about it.
That's right. The Conservative government could take a simple action right now. Stephen Harper can suspend the privileges of these two senators from the Conservative caucus.
I don't think the Prime Minister has any right to suspend privileges of people in the Senate. I don't think the House of Commons and the Senate.
He kicked out the member for Simcoe Gray for a far lesser concern. Absolutely. He kicked her out of caucus.
What you're saying is someone in the greenhouse is going to say...
But he couldn't suspend her from the House of Commons.
From the rumor,
he couldn't kick her out of the House.
Done illegal things. These two senators
can't kick her out of the House of the Senate.
Hang on.
No action's been taken.
Let's come back. Now we have this letter from Jason Kenney's office, written by an assistant, and this is making some news around Ottawa today. It's a letter from on behalf of Jason Kenney, written by Kazra Najatian, who's a director of multicultural affairs in the office of Jason Kenney. And this letter, which was sent to, it looks like it was sent to MP Linda Duncan, when it may have been intended for a Conservative MP with the same last name, but it ends up with Linda Duncan, and it's asking for support and financial assistance from this MP, an additional $200,000. Jason Kenney says he requires a financial commitment from various Conservative electoral district associations to make a campaign a success, which is building the Conservative brand in cultural communities. And so, Bill, we have this letter, and it's from an assistant, written on Jason Kenney's parliamentary office stationery. What's that all about?
Well, first of all, it's not Jason Kenney. It's his assistant has used the House of Commons letterhead to write this letter. I don't know why the letter was written to Linda Duncan. We'd have to find out from the assistant. But
because I'm guessing she has no interest in participating in the fundraising campaign to have the Conservatives break in and get support out of multicultural.
But I think the key here is that there's a lot of noise being made by the opposition on these issues. Quite frankly, people are concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about the economy. I think people in my office on Monday morning was talking about who won the Academy Awards. They're not talking about in and out. They're not talking about this kind of letter. I think the real issues are being missed by the opposition. They're trying to throw mud. It's not sticking. I think that the real issue here is the economy, and I think it's still a fragile recovery. I think people are concerned about their jobs, their kids' education. And I think that the narrative being proposed by the opposition isn't working.
Well, Mr. Kenney is concerned about he needs $200,000. He's talking about that.
Well, he isn't, though. The key here is that someone used his letterhead, but there's nothing on there that says Jason Kenney.
Okay, so this comes
from... you hear is a bus approaching for that staffer.
Let me jump to Kathleen, because the NDP got this document today. It's your MP who received it. What's the issue here?
Well, the issue is that you can't use parliamentary resources to solicit money. I mean, there are clear printing rules when you print documents to send it to constituents. Those rules are you're not allowed to ask for a vote, and you're not allowed to ask for money. The rules regarding parliamentary resources, which are different than necessarily the printing, are that you're not allowed to do what is clearly partisan work with the use of parliamentary resources. So, for instance...
Right, but this was meant to be a letter from one Conservative MP, we believe, to another Conservative MP saying we need money from your riding association.
Yeah, well, regardless of if they made an error or not to whom they sent the letter to, I leave that in their court to make the call on that. The point is you're not allowed to solicit money for campaign expenditures, whether they be advertisements or whatever he's indicating here, on parliamentary letterhead. It's just not allowed. Never mind the fact that it's a staffer who's paid through the House of Commons who is doing this work, and a staffer who's indicating that these MPs, if they want to contribute money to what is essentially a Conservative ad campaign, they can do so by contacting her through her House of Commons taxpayer-funded cell phone.
That stationary, that staffer, all Canadians, all taxpayers paid for that. So nothing partisan is to be done on House of Commons letterhead. I ran an MP's office, and it's made very clear to you. Now, they are doing that.
So party work and parliamentary work, the two have to be...
So if it is, if it was meant for another Conservative MP, that meant that just a lot more of those letters, a lot more of that time went out for partisan purposes on House of Commons letterhead. There's another thing, too, that the NDP revealed today.
The assumption being if it was meant to go to one Conservative MP, it's gone to all of them. Yeah. It's asking all of them for money, or may have.
And there's another thing in that document that the NDP revealed today. There's a document, a book called Breaking Through the Conservative Efforts or something in cultural communities. This, great job on you guys today revealing this, although it might have been a fluke how you got it, but the thing is, this is not going to be a one-day story. There's a lot of ethnic communities.
But I've looked at the background. The background documents are the sort of demographic charts that go with the pitch for the.
We'll see.
I didn't see anything.
I want to hear what the ethnic communities who are being targeted think of that.
In 1980, I went to the Liberal Convention as an observer, and I ended up in a room that probably wasn't supposed to be in, and I was handed a big book by the minister responsible then about how to break into cultural communities.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to call relevance.
But the point of the matter is, every party is trying to break into multicultural.
What's the relevance in 1980?
That's what politics is all about.
But the issue here is. Is a member of Parliament from one particular party allowed to use the resources funded by the people of Canada?
But first of all, it's not a member of Parliament. It's an assistant to a member of Parliament.
Well, it's
quite clear.
Okay,
but so Jason Kenney's not doing...
Then what should happen here?
They'll have to talk about that.
But they prevented staffers from going to committee because ministers were going to take responsibility for their staff. So if you cannot throw this staffer under the bus because by your own rules you're no longer allowing staffers to go to committee. So Jason Kenney's responsible for this.
Let's just close the circle
here. If it happens, we're 17 floors up here. We won't see it.
And if you close the circle and you go back to Senator Finley's tweet remarks that you started off the show with, he's saying that it's not PM Stephen Harper's call on whether we do the in-and-out scandal anyhow. We make lots of decisions. He's saying that as a staffer.
He didn't use the word scandal. You used the word scandal.
Okay, I'm using scandal.
But the point of the matter is that's true.
The point of the matter is that the head of the party, the CEO of the party, which is Stephen Harper, or in my party's case, Jack Layton is the CEO of my party, makes those decisions and is responsible for the staff that he employs. And in the same way, this case, Jason Kenney is responsible for his staff's action that are pushing out a letter on his behalf, to solicit
I can assure you in a campaign, the Prime Minister doesn't deal with those kinds of issues.
Either he's responsible or he's not. You guys can't have it both ways.
But the point of the matter is he is responsible, and he took responsibility that in 2008 he gave the order that this not be done.
We talked about stories on it today, and we did not have time to talk about whether we're going to have an election or not. But you know what? When we meet next week, we'll talk about it then.
There will be another election.
There will be another election. Yes. I'm kind of glad we didn't get into more election speculation today. It'll be what it'll be. It'll be what it'll be, and we'll be ready when it happens.
I think they've read the polls. There'll be no election.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have an update on the Kennedy document story for you. The government House Leader John Baird acknowledged this afternoon that parliamentary offices are not to be used for partisan purposes. He says the government is investigating.